ambaye kwa hekima na wema wako umeteua nyadhifa za viongozi na mabunge kwa ustawi wa jamii na utawala wa haki wa wanadamu. Twakusihi ututazame kwa neema nyingi sisi watumishi wako ambao umeridhika kutuita ili tutekeleze shughuli muhimu za jamhuri hii yetu. Twakuomba ututeremshie baraka zako sisi tuliokutanika hapa, na utujalie tuyatende na kufikiria mambo yote yatakayofikishwa mbele yetu kwa njia ya haki na uaminifu, ili utukufu na sifa zako ziendelezwe, na ili kustawisha amani, ufanisi na heri ya nchi hii yetu na wale ambao haja zao umezikabidhi mikononi mwetu. Amen. Order. Honorable members, we have the requisite quorum. We shall transact business.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers. Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, questions and statements. Order number 8, the impeachment procedure bill, Senate Bill number 15 of 2018, question to be put.
The Honorable Kaluma, what is out of order?
I thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I have a matter over which I was craving your indulgence, Honorable Speaker, to raise regarding the motion which has just been read. That is the impeachment bill coming from the Senate. And Honorable Speaker, it is a constitutional issue I wanted to raise for your directions at the stage where we are, so that there can be a ruling before question is put on that particular bill. With your indulgence, Honorable Speaker, if you permit. Honorable Speaker, I've looked at that bill which has come from our sister house. And Honorable Speaker, provision by provision, punctuation by punctuation, including commas and full stop, it plows from the Constitution at those relevant provisions and nothing more. Where it is leaving the Constitution, it is plowing from the County Governments Act for members of the County Executive Committee. I'm raising this, Honorable Speaker, because I've seen it in several other laws also coming from the Senate. And the question I'm asking is whether as a House we can be sitting to transact, even make decisions on purported bills merely repeating constitutional provisions at all force. There is nothing other than the title which is not in the Constitution in terms of the mentioned provisions. I was asking the necessity of this bill, and my position is that in terms of our not acting in vain, and in keeping with our proper time, Honorable Speaker, a bill such as this should be rejected by our Speaker before it costs us time here. Because there is nothing this bill is bringing it. There is no gap in law. In fact, it is repeating those provisions of the Constitution word for word, punctuation by punctuation. Honorable Speaker, I request you to rule. If you decide we are not ruling, I would request members to reject this bill so that this House is meaningfully engaged in future. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Dwale.
Mr. Speaker, with a lot of respect to my very good friend, Honorable Kaluma, I think he's raising this matter too late. And basically, what Honorable Kaluma is trying to do is just to lobby members for the rejection of this bill. Speaker, I agree with him. He can raise any constitutional matter at any time, but not when the question is about to be put. He had it when we read the first reading of this bill. He had it when we were doing the second reading. He had the opportunity to speak to it. And now you're about to put the question. I am not questioning the constitutional issues that he's going to raise, and I agree with him that how this House transacts bills from either House, particularly from the Senate, is well documented in the Constitution from Article 109 to Article 112, even 114 on money bills. But I think the timing and the sentiments are very suspect, and by allowing the Honorable Kaluma member for Homa Bay Town, if this bill is rejected this evening, then he had the opportunity to lobby. But I think he's out of order, Mr. Speaker.
The Leader of Majority.
Honorable Speaker, I want to first of all agree with my predecessor in terms of the process and procedure that yes, any member can raise a constitutional matter at any one point. But what the Honorable Kaluma has actually raised is not a constitutional matter, it's a process matter that in terms of the style and the wording of the bill. A bill could be in this House with 2 words, with 3 words, with 4 words, written in whatever format. This House will make a decision. And this is the second reading. What I would like to encourage the Honorable Kaluma and other people who feel there are some provisions that are not in this bill is between now and when we come for that reading is to prefer those amendments. And I'm sure the Committee on Law and Administration of Justice will be bringing some amendments to enrich this bill. So we are not at that point. We are not doing the third reading. We are completing what came from Senate, and then members are at liberty to now bring amendments to enrich this bill so that it becomes not just a replica of the provisions of the Constitution, but also includes provisions that Honorable Kaluma and others would like to see in the bill. But at this point, really, there's no matter for your determination in terms of a constitutional matter, and I think we need to make progress and continue with the business of the House, knowing that members have that opportunity between now and that reading to bring the amendments.
The Honorable Wangwe.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I just wanted to ask Honorable Kaluma to maybe find out from him how genuine he is placing his argument, because he is a member of the committee that dealt with this bill. And Honorable Speaker, for him to come at the tail end of the whole process, it is not very fair. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, I would request that if Honorable Kaluma has reservations, instead of now saying it before it goes to the Speaker, because he has moved the allegations, Honorable Speaker, to even to your office, I feel he's not being honest with the whole argument, in as much as, Honorable Speaker, what he's raising is fundamental. So for my take, Honorable Speaker, to him is, let him now take it to when we go to the committee of the whole House, let him come back to the committee, Honorable Speaker, so that he can prosecute the matter to the level he feels it's supposed to be, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Chris Wamalwa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a House of Records. A House of Records, Mr. Speaker, and procedure. And from the sentiments of Honorable Dwale and the rest, it shows clearly, Mr. Speaker, there's no value addition. We cannot debate for the sake of it, Mr. Speaker. And, Mr. Speaker, you cannot go to the committee of the whole House to anticipate that somebody goes for fishing expedition to come up with something, Mr. Speaker, which has not been outlined in the object of the bill, Mr. Speaker. And whatever Honorable Kaluma, Mr. Speaker, has raised, it is a very, very fundamental matter, Mr. Speaker. We cannot go on, Mr. Speaker, to waste Parliament's time, Mr. Speaker, on a repetition on a matter that is provided for in the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. We cannot legislate for the sake of it, Mr. Speaker. So I highly recommend, Mr. Speaker, that we must reject this bill. If at all, it cannot be withdrawn, Mr. Speaker. And I'm saying this, Mr. Speaker, when you have a provision of the Constitution, why you come up with a statute law is for purposes of operationalization and filling the gaps that are there, Mr. Speaker. Not repeating clause by clause. When you talk about the issue of referendum, why are you having issues in court, Mr. Speaker? Of course, matters of referendum have been provided in the Constitution. But there are many issues which were not adding up, like who should initiate or whatever the case. In the referendum law, for that matter, it should add value by defining. But you cannot just pick up, Mr. Speaker, the provisions of the Constitution, a repetition, word by word, to waste time for this House, Mr. Speaker. I urge members to reject it. I thank you.
The Honorable Amalwa, the Honorable Kaluma. Honorable, I think what the members are doing, these members are trying to do, is to extend the debate, which they missed. The Honorable Kaluma has not cited any article of the Constitution that has been obviated from. And I do not know of any precedent that requires that the format of a bill before this House must not adhere to the Constitution this way or the other way. But it is the business of the House. The Honorable Kaluma and all these members are members of this House. That this bill was brought to this House. It was approved by our Speaker. Our committees have spent time on it and seen fit to bring it for this plenary to deal with it. It is the business of this plenary, therefore, to deal with it one way or the other, which is provided for in that same Constitution that the Honorable Kaluma now quotes. And therefore, my business now, and the only business I must now conduct, is to proceed to put the question, and which I will do in this manner, right away. Honorable members, I now put the question that the impeachment procedure bill, Senate Bill number 15 of 2018, be now read a second time. Will as members of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as members of a contrary opinion say nay? Nay. The ayes have it.
A bill for an act of parliament to provide for the procedure for the removal from office by impeachment of a president, deputy president, cabinet secretary, governor, deputy governor, and member of a county executive committee, and for connected purposes. Order number 9, motion, implementation status of the report on a petition regarding deplorable working conditions of workers at the Kwale International Sugar Company Limited. Question to be put.
Honorable members, I now put the question that this House adopt the report of the Committee on Implementation, on the implementation status of the report of the Departmental Committee on Labor and Social Welfare on a petition regarding deplorable working conditions of workers at the Kwale International Sugar Company Limited, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, November 26, 2020. Will as members of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as members of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Order number 10, motion, approval of the Public Finance Management Equalization Fund Administration Regulations 2021.
Chairperson, Committee on Delegated Legislation.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move that this House adopts the report of the Committee on Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the Public Finance Management Equalization Fund Administration Regulations 2021, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, July 1st, 2021, and pursuant to the provisions of Section 205(1) of the Public Finance Management Act 2012, approves the Public Finance Management Equalization Fund Administration Regulations 2021, published as legal notice number 54 of 2021. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Equalization Fund was established under Article 204(1) of the Constitution, which requires that 0.5% of all revenue collected by the national government each year, calculated based on the most recent audited revenues as approved by the National Assembly, is paid to the fund. As a precondition, Mr. Speaker, to the utilization of Equalization Fund, Article 216(4) of the Constitution requires the Commission on Revenue Allocation to determine, publish, and regularly review a policy in which it sets out the criteria by which to identify the marginalized areas to benefit from this fund. Mr. Speaker, sir, this fund has had so many issues from the beginning. There was no allocation, Mr. Speaker, sir, to the Equalization Fund at the onset in the financial year 2011-2012, 2012-2013, and 2013-2014, because the Commission on Revenue Allocation had not yet released the first policy. However, Mr. Speaker, sir, when the Commission on Revenue Allocation released its first policy, Kenya shillings 12.4 billion was appropriated in accordance with the first policy to finance projects in 14 counties that were identified as marginalized for the administrative expenses. However, Mr. Speaker, sir, this fund has faced a lot of legal challenges. As soon as the first disbursements were made, Mr. Speaker, sir, there were legal petitions in court, and the regulations, the first regulations, were declared null and void, and that the Treasury was directed by court to go and make new regulations. And this is where we are now. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the second policy for Equalization Fund, remember the first policy, Mr. Speaker, sir, was suspended. I mean, the first policy came, and those people who went to court made it difficult for the utilization of the funds from the first policy. But if you look at the report, Mr. Speaker, sir, from this second policy, the counties that are supposed to benefit from the recommendation of the Commission on Revenue Allocation have increased, Mr. Speaker, sir, from 14 counties originally to 34 counties. And Mr. Speaker, sir, that makes it 100, if you look at page 9 of the report, it makes it 134 constituencies that shall benefit from this fund. The improvements, Mr. Speaker, that have come from these new regulations are something that members will want to take note. As a way of addressing the issues that were raised in court, Mr. Speaker, sir, these new regulations, apart from the regulations, Mr. Speaker, meeting all the legal statutory requirements, including the timelines and other provisions of the Statutory Instruments Act. These regulations, Mr. Speaker, sir, are what the ministry has done is to try to create a hybrid, Mr. Speaker, sir, to take care of all interests, the interests of the county governments, the interests of national government through what was formerly called the provincial administration, and also the interests of representatives of the people through the National Assembly as well as the county assemblies. For instance, Mr. Speaker, sir, in establishing an advisory board for the Equalization Fund regulation, Mr. Speaker, sir, if you look at the composition, honorable members, there is established an advisory board to be known as the Equalization Fund Advisory Board. That is regulation number 4.1. And if you look at 4.1D, Mr. Speaker, sir, there is one person from, there are other people, a chairperson who shall be appointed by the Cabinet Secretary, the Principal Secretary for Treasury, Principal Secretary for Devolution, one person from a pastoralist community nominated by National Assembly, one person from the Senate, okay, one person from the Council of Governors. And so, like I was saying, Mr. Speaker, this is trying to create a hybrid so that all interests are taken care of in terms of the implementation of this fund. If you look at, Mr. Speaker, sir, the establishment of what is called County Technical Committee, the interests of members of parliament is taken care of. For instance, these regulations propose, Mr. Speaker, that each county commissioner of an eligible county shall establish and convene an all-inclusive committee to be known as County Technical Committee, comprising of a chairperson who shall be the county commissioner, a CEC for finance, the constituency development fund managers. This is where members of parliament come in, a representative of the county assembly, and the chairperson of the constituency development fund. So in essence, Mr. Speaker, sir, the interests of honorable members as the representatives of the people at the national level and at the county level is taken care of, and a neutral person is put in to chair instead of having it chaired by the governor. Mr. Speaker, sir, in these regulations also, there is the establishment of the sub-county technical committee. There is the establishment also, and in the sub-county, if you look at the regulation number 16, you will see what is made of in terms of the, and you see the interest of members is taken care of. There is also the establishment, Mr. Speaker, in regulation number 18, establishment of the project identification committee. And in this, if you look at this committee that establishes, identifies projects, there is a representative of women, representative of CDF, committee member, representative of religious groups. So if you look at this, everybody is taken care of in terms of representation. Mr. Speaker, sir, in terms of, personally, at the beginning, Mr. Speaker, sir, if members remember, I had, this House approved a bill that I brought on equalization fund, and we approved it, and that bill is at the Senate. What are we saying? That the matters that are provided in this equalization fund are better addressed in a comprehensive bill. But as it is now, Mr. Speaker, and given that the equalization fund has timelines, it behoves upon these honorable members to work with what we have now, because time is not on our side. And we, as the representatives of the people, must ensure that we use this opportunity that we have with these hybrid regulations to ensure that our people get these funds before the time elapses. Because we are not very sure, honorable members, about the Constitution, yes, has provided for extension of time. How sure are you that the House that will sit
The
at that
Honorable
time...
The Honorable Kamket, I do not want to disrupt your flow, but you can see the Honorable member who is sitting directly in front of you. She seems to be uncomfortable. Could you just do the mask, if you
Mask?
don't mind?
To some people. Just move.
No, the Honorable.
No, she was not.
Honorable-
You
the
know,
Honorable-
Mr. Speaker, I was speaking to her heart. That she was admiring what I was saying. And because I was speaking to her heart, and I was speaking directly to her constituents, what I was saying was music to her ears.
The Honorable Kamket, everything that is spoken in this house is speaking to the hearts of Kenyans. But the
Yes,
health
to
of
the,
Kenyans is
to the
also
people she
very
represents.
important. But
So,
proceed.
yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed.
So, Mr. Speaker, actually, I was going to conclude, Mr. Speaker, that there are those of the view, Mr. Speaker, there are those of the misguided view that marginalization is a birthright. I beg to differ. Mr. Speaker, you cannot say that those who are marginalized are only the pastoralists. That is not true. Mr. Speaker, in terms of what the Commission on Revenue Allocation has done in coming up with the second policy, I want to convince and persuade honorable members to agree that, Mr. Speaker, what the Commission on Revenue Allocation has done, they went, even in my constituency, Mr. Speaker, the first commission never even visited Tiati constituency. They went up to Cabernet and said that Baringo is not marginalized. And we were excluded from the first policy. But this second commission went into deeper parts of Tiati constituency to places even I cannot access. And they came up with reports that are genuine, honest, and serious from the ground. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, you cannot be mean with what you do not have. I want to urge honorable members that let us first of all have this equalization fund. Let us implement this. Let us adopt these regulations. Let us have the funds paid, and let us expend what is there, even as we try to come up with a comprehensive legislation or any other proposal to ensure that our people come up to speed with the rest of the Republic of Kenya in terms of development. Mr. Speaker, sir, with those many remarks, I beg to move and ask my Vice Chair, the Honorable Muriuki Njagagwa, to second. I thank you.
The Honorable Zagagwa.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I must say that the legislative framework for this equalization fund is established under Article 204 of the Constitution, which requires that 0.5% of all the revenue collected by the national government each year, calculated on the most recent audited revenues as approved by the National Assembly, be paid into the fund. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, this fund has not been in operation. Money has been expended by the National Treasury, but money has not gone strictly to the marginalized areas for purposes of utilization. Mr. Speaker, the purpose of this regulation is to seek to establish a legal framework for implementation of Article 204. This entails the establishment of an advisory board. Mr. Speaker, the funds for these marginalized areas should be used for purposes of providing water, roads, health, and electricity to these marginalized areas. Mr. Speaker, by virtue of that explanation, it means that the equalization funds will actually be used to assist our constituents and Kenyans to attain the very basic good living standards. That is the provision of water, clean drinking water, and the health facilities. Mr. Speaker, you must appreciate that, and I would seek the members of this House to appreciate the fact that the equalization fund, having been established as a time frame of 20 years, What is remaining after the fund was established is barely a paltry 9 years. So about half of that time has been spent, and half of the money, and the money has not been utilized by the constituencies. Though, as my chairman has stated earlier, this parliament has power to add or to seek for extension of time by a further 6 years. But that is a matter that will be dealt with by the members when we get to the finalization of the 20 years. Mr. Speaker, the only small bit that I would wish to comment on this utilization fund, in as much as I'm seconding it and seeking members to support this report, is that during the first, the first chairman of the Commission of Revenue Allocation, that was Mr. Cheselem. He visited an area in Kitui. He actually shed tears that that particular area had been left behind, was lagging behind as a marginalized area in Kenya, where students, pupils in school are sitting on stones. They had mud classes, and he shed tears that this was part of Kenya. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, when this team again, Commission of Allocation of Revenue, went around again, they never even considered that part of Kitui worthy to get the equalization fund. My own area in Bere, Mr. Speaker, which is a marginalized area, has not been considered to receive this equalization fund. So I would seek this commission, as they go around again, when they come for review, to get to the bottom of these constituencies, the marginalized areas, so that each part of Kenya gets to get the funds. Mr. Speaker, Regulation 10 of 6, the expenses of the board, and it says that 3% of the funds shall go to meeting the expenses of running of the board. Mr. Speaker, there is a saving grace, a clause that all funds which are not utilized by the end of each financial year will not be limited back to the treasury. This money will still be retained in the fund and will be used for the purposes that they were intended for. What that means is that there will not be a mad rush at the end of each financial year to have monies expended, so that we are not caught up by a lapse of time. What really happens with other ministries is that at the end of each financial year, you find them they're on a spending spree to make sure that they have spent this money. Mr. Speaker, there are about 14 counties that are going to benefit from this equalization fund. But like I said earlier, we need the commission to go down to the real other areas that have not benefited. So, Mr. Speaker, when the regulatory making authority appeared before us, they were able to explain to us, and we took them, we questioned them on what they've done, and they were able to establish that there was indeed public participation, and we were convinced that they talked to the real stakeholders. An explanatory memorandum, Mr. Speaker, was attached to their regulations, and we were also convinced that it really touched on the issues that were before us. So with those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to second the report. Thank you.
Honorable members. Honorable members, order, order. The member for Siaya, even as you walk, you must keep your senses about you, especially the hearing. Honorable members, allow me to propose the question that this House adopts the report of the Committee on Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the Public Finance Management Equalization Fund Administration, Regulations 2021, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, 1st July 2021, and pursuant to the provisions of Section 205, Subsection 4 of the Public Finance Management Act 2012, approves the Public Finance Management Equalization Fund Administration Regulations 2021, published as legal notice number 54 of 2021. The first opportunity will go to the Honorable Duale, member for Garissa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we are on the 11th year of the implementation of the Equalization Fund. And this fund has a lifeline of 20 years. as provided for in Article 204 of the Constitution. And Mr. Speaker, the framers of the Constitution 2010, and I want the chair of delegated legislation to listen to me. They said it in subsection 2, that the national government shall use the equalization fund to provide basic services, that's water, all that. But the most important word that the framers of the Constitution used was to bring and provide basic services, that is health, water, and electricity, to the extent necessary to bring quality of those services in those areas to the level generally enjoyed by the rest of the nation, so far as possible. So the framers of the Constitution were deliberate in putting Article 204 and providing equalization fund to 14 counties. By changing it to 34 counties, it is contrary to the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. And you know, a commission of revenue allocation going around, we agree. We agree. There are certain pockets even within Nairobi that are marginalized. But the person living in Nairobi compared to the person in Kitui, when it comes to water, Garissa is different. But anyway, this is a system that has been designed since independence to marginalize the marginalized of the 14 counties of the pastoralist, and our day will come. Our day will come when we shall put in place a government that is of concern to the pastoralist. A government that understands that every region of this country must develop at the same pace as the region where the leader of that government comes from. This fund, Mr. Speaker, is very critical for the provision of basic services in marginalized areas. Utilization has not been very effective, Mr. Speaker. One, because the National Treasury dragged their feet. Two, there was a court case in 2019 that delayed the implementation of this fund. And now we are only remaining within 9 years. Forget about the shenanigans and the story that was put in that BBI, which by the grace of the Almighty Allah, its fate is somewhere. Because we were cheated, you know, we were denied constituencies. We were denied everything in that animal called BBI. Then we were told, we will extend for you equalization fund. You can't extend our lifeline in the ICU so that we live more. But now that BBI is nowhere to be seen, we only have 9 years before the equalization fund sees its sunset days. Mr. Speaker, the approval of these regulations is very critical. It will set the ball rolling in terms of the administration of the fund. And we hope that with the approval of these regulations, the CS National Treasury, and I want to look at him, he is a pastoralist, physically, origin, but I don't know whether he will behave like a pastoralist. He must be a pastoralist, both in heart and in soul. It's the first time a pastoralist has occupied that office, and he must implement these regulations. Speaker, this report is important because there's 1.2 billion pending bill. There are about 352 projects that are lying idle in counties. And Mr. Speaker, the approval of these regulations is good news that we shall use even the 6.8 billion that has been allocated in this financial year. Speaker, I want to assure the House that as the representative of the people of Garissa Township, and even my sisters and brothers from Lagdera, Fafi, Dadaab, and Ijara, and Balambala, we will use that money in accordance with the wishes of our people. But we will have our day, we will have our government.
Very well. Honorable members, you will note that contributions in this committee report is 5 minutes. The Honorable Aruguru, what is out of order?
Now, Mr. Speaker, I'm just concerned
with...
with...
The Honorable TJ. The Honorable TJ, just hold on. The Honorable Ruguru, proceed with your
Mr.
point of
Speaker,
order.
the Honorable Eden Duale is a senior member who I respect most. I was just concerned because he made an allegation at the floor of the House that the BBI is no longer, and that he predicts to know its fate. And he's saying it's dead. I want him probably to furnish this House with further information, because this is a house of rule and order, and we cannot operate with hearsay. We want him to tell us where he met with the Court of Appeal judges, and he has, with no uncertain terms, a ruling that has condemned or declared BBI dead. With all love and with all honesty, I know he's a gentleman and a true one for this matter, and very religious and a strict one.
The Honorable TJ Kajwang, what is out of order?
Mr. Speaker, today it looks like member for Garissa Town is in problems, because mine also relates to him. I'm not worried about BBI. BBI is in safe hands. I'm worried about the last sentence that member for Garissa Town made, that they will have their government. If it is not explained properly, Mr. Speaker, is it in order that the member for Garissa can imply what sounds seditious or in fact treasonable, that he intends to have his government in a Republic of Kenya which is united under one president or under one presidency, and united under one legislature, which is the National Assembly and the Senate? Isn't it seditious or treasonous for a member for Garissa to have spoken those words?
Honorable members, there's nothing out of order. The Honorable Duale expressed his opinion, and probably his wishes about the BBI. But everybody in this House knows that the BBI is under consideration of the Court of Appeal, and there will be a decision made on that BBI. The Honorable TJ, the Honorable Duale is in order to desire to have to be in a government. He's part of this government, and I am sure that all these members have got certain leanings, and in their hearts they are praying that they have certain, they make the next government. That is the business of politicians. And all the politicians here, I'm sure, they are aspiring to be in some form of government or the other. So he cannot be out of order. No, the Honorable Duale, you are done. I will move on. No, you are not out of order. I've not ruled that you are out of order. Honorable members, we will have the Honorable Arbele Malimo to contribute, the member for Laisamis. Honorable members, this is a very serious matter. I think we should give as many members as possible an opportunity to speak. The Honorable member for Laisamis, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for Mr. Speaker, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, indeed I cite here to support the passage of the Equalization Fund. Because, Mr. Speaker, this Equalization Fund, from the time the 2010 Constitution was enacted, unfortunately, it has never been operationalized. And therefore, now that the Treasury has come up with a framework, a statutory requirement to have the fund operational, Mr. Speaker, I support and I am for the idea that this circulation fund should be under the supervision of the members of parliament, just like the CDF is doing today. Mr. Speaker, as much as devolution is being appreciated by Kenyans at large. But indeed, there is a lot of complaints at the county level, at the constituency level, and the only fund which is being appreciated today that is actually doing a lot of construction of schools, including the security buildings for our officers, and taking care of sports is CDF. And therefore, this equalization fund, I am seeing that it is actually putting so many people on board that we are going to have a board at the county, we are going to have another board at the national level. So you are trying to make this process very cumbersome. It would have been better if we just come up with one committee at the national level, which will be able to deal with all these, the issue of equalization fund, and the fact that we have members of parliament from the affected regions, that is pastoralist-dominated areas, which are actually have been lagging behind in terms of development, for them to come up to speed to the level where other Kenyans are. Indeed, it will be prudent if such funds are managed at the national level and to involve the members of parliament. For that few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support. Thank you. I've just moved to you.
The Honorable Odwal Adhiambo, nominated member.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, on the outset, I would like to say that I support the report. Honorable Speaker, but as I do so, as indeed seemed to be reflected as you read through the report, and even from what the Vice Chair indicated as he was seconding, I believe, Honorable Speaker, that we need to look into how it is that what we had in Article 204 that was specifically ensuring that we could bring to the same level those areas, and that were identified as the 14 counties. Honorable Speaker, I think it is important that we recognize that to come to the level where, in terms of the concerns that I see in this report, as well as, Honorable Speaker, the observations that the committee has raised, we are facing an issue, Honorable Speaker, that we might want to take a little more time to internalize and to reflect on. In particular, Honorable Speaker, I'm thinking of the word marginalization, because at the heart, indeed, of this equalization fund, there is the recognition or the manner in which, as we came up with the Constitution, we knew that there might be some areas that would not be treated, or some factors or some groups of people that would not be treated as equal as others. And therefore, when we think of marginalization, we are seeing that there is treatment of a group or people as insignificant. Honorable Speaker, as I read through the report, which indeed presents not just the context, and indeed helps us to see that it is important to get this framework and to be sure that we can, by approving and bringing into operationalization the regulations, we will ensure that completion of 352 projects that were spread across the 4 counties will be completed. My concern, and what I would like that as a House of Representatives we take note of, is that when we are looking at equalization, it is actually different from equity. Honorable Speaker, I'm saying this by looking at what we can see as different factors that could define people or persons or groups to be marginalized. And when we want to address the issue, Honorable Speaker, we can either do it by equalization, where in a way we would be looking for equal involvement, equal participation, and in equal decision-making. And therefore, we could look, indeed, Honorable Speaker, as seems to be the case, as basic services. But, Honorable Speaker, we also need to take note that when we consider that marginalization is really seeking to see that we do not treat any group as insignificant, it is also useful to look at the issue of equity. Honorable Speaker, equity deals with the issue of fairness. Equity will not necessarily begin from the point of view of equalization by saying that you must treat what, in terms of the framework that you have defined in equal measure, but you would want, Honorable Speaker, to then look at the context and perhaps even look at changes that might have taken place. And I believe, Honorable Speaker, that as I look through this report, it seems to me that the reflection and the growth that we are seeing from the first policy and moving on, Honorable Speaker, to the second policy, which is now giving us 34 counties, it's something that we should not ignore. Because, Honorable Speaker, as I conclude, I want to speak as a member of the National Cohesion and Equal Opportunity Committee. Honorable Speaker, it is my experience, even as we go around this country, that it is necessary to acknowledge that there might be aspects or areas where certain groups of people, either by region or because they are pastoralists or for whatever other parameter, could be seen to be marginalized, but there would be others, Honorable Speaker, that they might not really be placed in such a hard place. So I do support this report, but I believe, Honorable Speaker, that we need to keep rethinking and relooking at issues of marginalization, and particularly recognize the difference between equalization and equity in addressing this. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Professor. We shall have the Honorable Muturi Kingangi, member from Mbeere South.
Absent. Proceed.
Oh, he's not in the house? The next one on my list here then would be the Honorable Olekenta Motaila, member for Narok North.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I will also like to say that I support the report, except that I think the committees are too many. And I will suggest that we have the National Committee and the Constituency Committee. This one will make it easier as far as implementation of these projects are concerned. And I think the case study that should be used is the CDF format. Honorable Speaker, this fund was set to ensure that at least there is some development in areas that have been left out since independence. The irony is, as we are talking now, Honorable Speaker, there is still inequality in the distribution of resources in this country. In fact, the most developed areas are still getting more resources as far as budgetary allocations are concerned. So it's even more disheartening to note that even the little that was given through the Equalization Fund has not been dispersed for the benefit of those areas that were supposed to benefit, the 14. Indeed, when they added another 20 to the list, I don't know whether somebody really thought seriously about it, because you are spreading those resources so thinly that it will have no impact on the development which was actually envisaged. So I think that was the first mistake, and I think there was also an element of trying to still undermine that development as far as the marginalized communities are concerned. Honorable Speaker, some of our districts were so-called closed districts. And I think my colleagues will just listen, they'll get a chance to contribute, because maybe they don't really realize how much we are left behind, we have been left behind as far as development is concerned.
The Honorable Kenta.
Yes, sir.
There seems to be a point of order from the Honorable Kilonzo, member for Yatta.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, is an honorable member, in order to misinform the House, that indeed 20 new counties were added. Well, it's very clear. If you come to Machakos, it's not the county which was added. It's only one constituency, which neighbors those marginalized areas, and so many others, Mr. Speaker. Look at Nakuru, it's only Rongai which was added. But when you assume all those constituencies,
the Honorable
misinformation.
Kilonzo,
Are you in order,
Mr.
Mr.
Out of order.
Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Kilonzo, you are
Honorable
assistant
Speaker,
member. Yeah?
I like maybe
that
to.
Is argumentative.
I think I would like maybe to advise my colleague that the
Let's
Constitution
proceed,
provided.
Honorable Kenta,
yes.
to make your contribution.
Yes. Yes. So I believe that the Constitution set out the 14 constituents, 14 counties. So any additions, I will say, are unconstitutional because it's not provided for in the Constitution. And I think it was actually meant to frustrate the benefits that these counties are supposed to get. Honorable Speaker, There is also the issue of projects having stalled. There are projects that were given to our constituencies or counties, and they have stalled. And some of these are actually intentional, because if contractors are given work to do, like for example, my constituencies, there are projects which are supposed to be carried out, bridges and such, but they stalled. They are contractors, but they are not carrying out their work. So what is Kara doing about it, for example? There is something that is going on that is not satisfactory. I think Treasury has been unfair to these marginalized counties, because if Treasury itself is the one that is supposed to identify and to actually allocate money, and it's not doing it, and they have no will to do so, then I think the regulations that are now forming these committees at the local level or at the level of the constituencies and all that is of great use. But more than anything else, we have less than 9 years to go. Considering the status of our economy, the status of this country's economy is worrying. So even if you come and say that you are going to carry out some of these projects and you do not have the necessary financial might to do so, I think we'll just be playing academic games which will never materialize into anything. So I think I support the committee, and more than anything else, I think the most important thing is enforcement. In fact, we have called some of these CSS to our committee on asking the level of implementation, and always the argument is money has not been allocated. But I know this is actually money that has been set out and set down by the Constitution. Where has it gone to? That is the question. Why are we getting big projects in developed areas, as far as water is concerned, electricity is concerned, infrastructure is concerned, health is, why are they getting this money and they're not getting the little that is supposed to benefit the pastoralist community? There is a very unsatisfactory way of distributing resources in this country, and I think the equalization fund, and I'd like to request the chairman that the Treasury CS must account for what is happening to us. He's one of us, but we are suffering more than anybody else. And I think, as Honorable Dwala said, the CS must come out and tell the people what has he been doing for them, because they are really suffering, including his own county. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Murugara.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the recommendation that we adopt this report. And from the outset, let me thank my chairman, the Honorable Kamket. He has actually very eloquently moved the motion. And when I look at the beneficiaries, I notice that his county is actually number 1, and his constituency, Tiati, is actually expressly named. So I see the passion, and that is the reason why the member who was before him had actually to just sit in and listen and hear the passion as regards this very important report regarding these regulations, which are very timely. Mr. Speaker, when I came to Parliament in 2017, my first task was to ask why Tharaka was actually not benefiting from the equalization fund. The authority was able to inform me that only one sublocation in the Tharaka North sub-county did benefit. While it is on record, it is known in the entire country that one of the most marginalized areas is actually the Tharaka and the Tharaka constituency. This aggrieved me, and I was advised by the board that since the regulations were actually likely to be thrown out by the courts, they would endeavor to ensure that my constituency, Tharaka, is included. I am proud to note that Tharaka Nithi County is now number 30, and my constituency, Tharaka, is named. And I'm able to proudly inform the people of Tharaka that through the effort of their member of parliament, they are now included in the equalization fund. And I say this without battling an eyelid or winking, because I started this in 2017. The importance of equalization fund cannot be overemphasized, and especially now that we are running out of time. This is a fund that was to last 20 years to try and bring out areas of the country that have been left behind so that they are able to equalize with the other areas that were developed either intentionally, accidentally, or circumstantially. It's important that we continue to support areas that were left behind, and this is why you find regions such as northeastern Kenya and northern Kenya are passionate about this. It goes also to regions within the eastern region, formerly known as the Eastern Province, because possibly only Embu is not appearing here. The rest of the districts, as they were called, which are now counties, are actually included here. Now, it's also important to point out that we as a committee, through our advice, we were able to ensure that constituencies were recognized while implementing this fund. And this is why your chairpersons of the CDF will be sitting with the county governments, with the other stakeholders, including the county commissioner, to ensure that these funds are properly disbursed and are of benefit to the people we represent. It is well known that when counties are left on their own, they can turn out to be wrong. And they can just misuse money through dubious contracts, through conflict of interest, through anything that they think is going to benefit their own pockets. This is why we said we must sit in there and bring the exemplification of the CDF into this fund. Because CDF, as we speak today, any government that would talk will say we have offered development to all constituencies through the CDF. Because in other constituencies, if not all, maybe just a few with audit queries, this money has been properly utilized. You go to every constituency, you are able to see what the money has done. We want this equalization fund replicated in the format of the CDF so that the people at the grassroots, especially those marginalized, in terms of electricity supply, in terms of roads, in terms of water, and in terms of even school infrastructure, can actually benefit to the maximum from this. These regulations are very timely. They are very welcome. I urge the House to adopt the report so that we can move to speed to implement within the remaining 12 months or so before we go to meet the electorate, so that we also have another feather to our campaigns. I support.
Honorable Senior is campaigning. I wish you the best. But you've done well. You have done extremely well. We shall have contribution from the Honorable Muliungi Mutemi, member for Mwingi Central.
Are you also on the list? Are you on the list?
Which list? Yeah, sorry, Mr. Speaker, you may need to protect me from my colleague here, Chris Wamalwa, because he's interrupting me. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to support this motion of equalization fund. Mr. Speaker, where I come from, equalization fund, as we know it, is not equal. Is not equal as per the term, equalization. The selection of the marginalized areas are not fair at all. The way it was done before, it was not fair. And there are areas which become even more marginalized than they were before. Mr. Speaker, the criteria used in identifying areas to benefit from equalization fund is also very biased, and the decision makers are also biased. Mr. Speaker, who said that marginalized areas are only pastoralist areas? Who said so? Mr. Speaker, there are people in Kenya who are not pastoralists, but they are marginalized and do not feel like they are part of Kenya. And they don't herd animals, but they are poor. They live in poverty. Mr. Speaker, there are dry areas in this part of Kenya which have no water, they have no food to put on the table, and sometimes, most of the times, they rely on relief food, which never comes. It's not reliable. It is called relief food, but it is not reliable. And therefore, there are people who suffer. There are also areas with no basic infrastructure, no water, no electricity, and there is nothing. And these people are not pastoralists. Mr. Speaker, I agree with the motion on the following basic grounds. Number one, the motion is considering the areas which were left out before. It's also changing the model of operation by creating committees which, in my view, they will create more transparency and more equality in the division of revenue of equalization fund. Number three, it is also including constituencies, chairman of CNDF, and these are representatives of the people. So they listen to the people. They hear what the people say. And therefore, on those basic grounds, Mr. Speaker, I support the motion. Thank you.
The Honorable Jaldisa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to also contribute. As I do that, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the committee for doing a very good report. Mr. Speaker, the report seeks to establish the equalization board that will help the CS in managing the fund. Mr. Speaker, I listened to many members of this House talking about other areas being left out, other areas being marginalized. Mr. Speaker, the fact that this fund has taken over 13 years to be implemented in itself is a marginalization. And Mr. Speaker, I don't want to complain the fact that the initial marginalization pocket was increased from 14 to 34. I just want to take whatever small that we are given and to make a difference to the lives of our people. We need this fund, Mr. Speaker, to build more roads, to build more hospitals, and to make sure our people access water. Mr. Speaker, I want to specifically agree with the committee where they said there is a need for the Commission of Revenue Allocation to further review the policy and criteria for sharing revenue among marginalized areas to allow for marginalized areas which were left out of the first and second schedule, first and second policies to benefit from this fund. Mr. Speaker, you remember the Senate took so many months to agree on the revenue sharing formula. Mr. Speaker, to this day, we have a lot of problem to accept those formulas as they are. I don't know whether this House had an opportunity to critically look at it. Mr. Speaker, that is a policy which gives a flat rate to the perimeters across the counties without giving consideration that the counties are at different levels in terms of development. Mr. Speaker, they propose to give 8%, 18% to health. Same Kiambu County and Isiolo County. Isiolo County is where one dispensary is 200 kilometers apart on a rough road. Mr. Speaker, it gives an equal percentage of water, Nairobi and Isiolo County, where 80% of the population of people from Isiolo County do not have access to water. As I'm speaking here, I have 2 children. I know water is a devolved function, but admitted in a hospital because of lack of water, even to drink. A location called Sericho, Modogashe. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, it's my hope and prayer that this regulation is passed so that those young people's lives are saved. Thank you, I support.
The Honorable Abdullahi Sheikh, Mandera North.
I stand under Standing Order 95 and looking at the mood of the House.
Yes.
And by looking at the contributions that have been made, and everybody is in support of the regulations, and because we already had the equalization bill that was passed here, and so I request that the mover be called upon to reply. Thank you.
Honorable members, you know the rules of the House. You know the rules of the House, honorable members. The honorable member has stood in his place. He's perfectly within the rules of the House. And if he does what he has done, the Speaker's role is merely to put the question on whether the House agrees with him. And if you don't agree with him, we will continue. But if you agree with him, then the mover will be called to reply. So therefore, allow me then to put the question that the mover be called to reply. Will as many of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many of that opinion say nay? Nay. The nays have it. So we shall continue. The next one the next member here is the Honorable Ochakampong Peter, member for Sigor.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you for this opportunity. I rise to support this report, the report on the consideration of the Public Finance Management Equalization Fund Administration Regulations 2021. Honorable Speaker, as I start to say that I support these regulations and say that this regulation should have been passed like yesterday, because the rationale for the Equalization Fund was to provide basic services in marginalized areas so that in terms of those services, those areas come as close as possible in terms of the basic services to the rest of this country. So I want to say that since this fund has a sunset clause of I think 20 years, and we are only left with 9, it would be very good if we pass these regulations so that we get projects that are funded through this fund to be completed. Now already, Honorable Speaker, from this report, we have 352 projects, out of which about 112 have been completed, and 240 have stalled, simply because we did not have regulations to ensure that funds are released for their completion. So I want to say that these regulations will go a long way to ensuring that those projects get completed. Now, 2, these regulations will ensure that the completion of those projects, and again, the creation of an advisory board. Now, however, I want to say that this board, the composition of this board, and especially one person nominated by the Senate, I wanted to say that the person nominated by the Senate should be a person from the marginalized areas. Just like in D, where this report is saying one person from pastoralist community nominated by the National Assembly, and in F, one person nominated by the Council of Governors drawn from areas defined as marginalized. So in the same vein, in the same way, even the person nominated by Senate should also be from the region that is marginalized. So that's what I want to say about the composition of the board, the advisory board. And again, the chief executive officer, I also want to suggest that should also be identified from those areas. And then, Honorable Speaker, I also want to say that the approval, like I said before, will ensure that, like now, in the place where I come from, in Sigor constituency, for example, we have a stall project, water project, called Copro Water Project. And the community there are always asking what is happening, and they think money has been lost, which is not, Honorable Speaker, which is not true. I also want to say that the committees suggested in this report are too many. And this will add to bureaucracy and therefore delaying implementation of projects and even identification. Because for all these committees to agree, it will take time. Because we have a national board, we have a county, we have a sub-county, we have also identification and implementation committee. All this is bureaucracy and it will delay. So I wanted to suggest that if probably as we move on, if we could adopt the CDF model, where we have a national board, and then from there we go direct to constituencies, it would be good. So I want to say that, Honorable Speaker, and say I support this report so that it unlocks the equalization funds so that stall projects can continue. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Hulufo Order, member for Isiolo North.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to speak to this report and the regulation also. I support it on the basis that it is one of the reasons why operationalization of this fund has not taken place. Unfortunately, there are things which we are not comfortable with. I think listening to some of our colleagues, there is need for us to travel widely within the country to appreciate the difficulties some of our people, Kenyan people, who are living in Asal, particularly the arid part of this country, are facing. Mr. Speaker, this fund was set up as a constitutional fund, and it's unfortunate that 9 years after we have promulgated our Constitution 2010, nothing much has been done. There was court action. The ruling of the court has also kind of shaped, what should be included in this regulation. We need to appreciate that. But at least the CS has tried within, the constraints of the ruling of that case to ensure that there is broad participation of stakeholders, particularly in terms of identification of projects. Mr. Speaker, this fund was meant to help the marginalized areas enjoy quality of service which is as close as those enjoyed by the other parts of the country. And specifically, it was meant to look at water, service provision in terms of water, electricity, health, and so on and so forth. Mr. Speaker, to just help my colleagues appreciate the difficulties some of the people we are representing in this House are going through, in my own constituency, I have 7 wards. Out of the 7 wards, 4 of the wards 80% of residents in 4 of the 7 wards have no access to any form of water. Women take almost a whole day to get water which is not fit for human consumption. If you look at a ward, for example, which is called Cherab, the entire division, there is no single borehole providing clean water. We only have ponds which are impounded when it rains, and the kind of water which we consume is water which I think none of us in this house will dare to take that water, however thirsty you may be. If you look at electricity, we only hear about it. My constituents only get to enjoy electricity when they visit either county headquarters or sub-county headquarters. And still we are part of this republic. I am surprised that instead of looking at, how development resources, in terms of infrastructure, resources allocated to road construction and other mega projects are distributed across the country, we are so much focused on this small part, this small fund, which is just half of, less than half percent, which was meant to, help us catch up with the rest of Kenya. Everybody wants to have a share of this small resource. I think we need to open up our minds. We need to question, as a house which has critical role in the budget, we need to look at what the national government allocates for other development resources are distributed across the regions. Mr. Speaker, CRA, the Commission on Revenue Allocation, has responsibility of identifying areas which will benefit. Originally, only 14 counties were actually identified as marginalized, but additional 20 were added. When they started looking at, instead of looking at the counties, they started looking at locations and sub-locations. It is very interesting that a whole county could benefit from this resource because there is a single sub-county which is classified as marginalized. And if you look at those few sub-locations or locations in developed counties which now have been added to be beneficiaries of equalization fund, the kind of services they have access to is not comparable to what we have in arid regions. Mr. Speaker, my time is up. With those few remarks, I support adoption of this report and by extension, the regulation.
The member for Rabai.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the approval of this report, which by extension is really supporting the regulations that are there. Mr. Speaker, I'm a member of the Delegated Legislation Committee, and maybe we should tell members that we are where we are today because the Council of Governors went to court and put a stop to this equalization fund. So most of the provisions that are appearing in these regulations, as much as we might not be comfortable with them, they were actually dictated by the judgment of the court, which indicated that this should happen for equalization to continue. Mr. Speaker, we really examined the regulations and found that they were in line with Article 204. They also complied with the Statutory Instrument Act and public participation, which is really a requirement. Overwhelmingly, they did public participation, and members of the public supported that these changes be made so that the stalled projects that are an eyesore in our republic can be revived. Mr. Speaker, indeed, these stalled projects are giving members of parliament a bad name because not everybody would understand that there is an order of the court which has stopped the project. But mostly they blame members of parliament. In Rabai, for example, we have the Rabai Technical Institute, which stalled when this judgment was delivered by the court. We've been going to the offices of education, treasury, and they could not move an inch because of these regulations. So, Mr. Speaker, if we do approve the report, we will be approving the regulations which are being awaited by the Ministry of Treasury to ensure that they release funds to complete these projects. Mine really is to urge members, if we really want to have a clout in the forthcoming battle, we need to approve this report. We need to approve the regulations so that money can be released to finish these projects. Otherwise, if these projects are not finished, they might come back to finish us instead. So, Mr. Speaker, I support and I urge the House that we support for our own, so that our people can benefit. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Chachu, member for North Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to support Equalization Fund's regulations report. Mr. Speaker, I have a very special history with this fund. As a frame of this constitution in 2010, I participated in Naivasha, and as members of pastoral MPs, led by Abdikadir, Honorable Eko Echuro, Letin Kaiseri, Honorable Sophia Abdi, and others, really fought for this fund to come into existence. And that's how Article 204 of the Constitution, which established the Equalization Fund, came into being. So, Speaker, sir, as the 11th Parliament, as the Secretary General of Pastoral Parliamentary Group, I worked so hard to ensure the first policy of this fund was operationalized, and we were able to get the money for those 14 counties. Unfortunately, Council of Governors went to court, and as a result of that, for the last 3 or 4 years, nothing has been happening. But the fund is secured, because it's secured by the Constitution, and there's nothing that will be lost. But we lost a lot of time. These regulations enables us now to basically come up with a hybrid of some kind so that the counties are taken care of, county governments are taken care of, and the civil society and all other stakeholders in development are being brought on board so that you can move as per the court ruling. Even in this, Mr. Speaker, sir, I personally participated in drafting with some people from Treasury. Actually, I'm the one who came up with the idea that our CDF chairpersons, CDF fund managers, at the county level are part of the technical team. At the constituency level, our secretary of CDF will be part of that technical team. At the ward level, our committee members from CDF, who are gazetted on the floor of this House, are going to be the members. We are doing that so that we are the ones who will identify the projects. Okay? The money can be managed here, but in terms of project identification, members of parliament, if they are strategic enough and they work with their structures on the ground, which are now part of this regulation, they can surely identify the projects in their constituencies. And I urge them to do so and to take a lead, because, of course, the CEC at the county level will not take that lead. I strongly encourage the members to do so. Mr. Speaker, during the first policy, we were able to get funds, and we actually did construct major facilities in our constituencies. In Marsabit County, we got over 80 and 90 million, and we shared it equally among the 4 constituencies. From that, we were able to build hospitals, major roads, Mr. Speaker, sir, and other infrastructure. But because of the court case, those facilities which have been completed, particularly in my constituency, they have all been completed. We are not able to access them or use them. They're just lying idle because the contractors are not being paid, and as a result, our people are not accessing that service. This will unlock that. Once they are paid, then the facility will be released to the county governments and other relevant authorities, and we'll be able to make use of this. So it's so important that we pass these regulations. Mr. Speaker, sir, there are contractors who actually invested so much in those projects and have not been paid to date. As a result, some of them have actually closed their shops, has actually gone out of business in terms of, because they are not being paid because of this court case, which basically called the first regulations null and void. Mr. Speaker, I'm also convinced that there are pockets of poverty in many parts of this country, not just among the pastoral communities. that there is poverty. I think even in urban poor here in Nairobi, we're going to go to Kibera, you see a lot of poverty. So I'm not opposed at all that this has been extended from 14 to 20 to 34 counties, and from maybe 100 constituencies to now 134 constituencies. I think it's fair. I think all Kenyans should be taken care of. Mr. Speaker, sir, it's really, really my hope that since the county government, unlike the first policy, whereby basically national government, through national treasury and members of parliament had a major role, now the county government have been brought on board. And the CEC for finance at our counties is actually the one who is going to consolidate all the reports, submit to Nairobi, and do all the necessary follow-up. And these counties have not been doing that well, as we all know. I really, really hope they will not waste this opportunity. I really hope they will collaborate with the members of parliament and other structures in our constituencies and ensure that these funds are actually well utilized. I strongly urge my colleagues to really not use these funds like CDF. Go for major projects that can make a difference. Don't use these funds to build classrooms. Go for an hospital. Go for a technical school. Because you only have it for a few years. So please don't spread it so thin that will not have any impact. In Marsabit, we did that.
Very well. Let me have the member for Kirinyaga Central, Honorable Abugu Bonene.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this chance to add my voice in support of this report by a committee which I belong to, Directed Registration. Madam Speaker, I would want to assure the House and the members that we first of all looked at the Constitution and the Statutory Instrument Act, and we confirmed that these regulations are done pursuant to Section 204 of the Constitution of this Republic. We also ensured that the requirement of Statutory Instrument Act were followed to the letter, more so about public participation. There was extensive public participation, actually across the whole of the Republic, and which was actually done within a pandemic, and the Treasury ensured that they did virtual public participation mostly within the entire country. We also confirmed that these regulations were published within the requisite timelines, and the committee was completely satisfied that regulations were brought properly before the House and the committee. We also looked at the merit of these regulations, and more importantly, what we considered is that since the nullification of previous guidelines, the disbursement of the equation fund has stalled, and currently we have some bills amounting to 1.2 billion which are yet to be paid. Also, in the financial year 2021 and 2021-2022, this parliament has already allocated a whopping 13.6 billion, which because of lack of this regulatory framework, it is yet to be dispersed. And having considered that, we felt that the regulations are timely and actually should be passed without further ado or further delay. However, Madam Speaker, during our consideration of these regulations, we found that the Committee on Revenue Allocation, in the first policy and second policy, we felt that there are still some areas which have still been left out. Much as we are saying, Constitution talked about 14 counties, and currently there are 34 counties, even the remaining counties, there are some few areas which still we felt that they have been left out, and we are of the view that in the third policy, maybe those areas should also be considered. But also more important is that let this fund achieve what the framers of the 2020 Constitution and thought of, that all Kenyans can be brought to a level where they are proud to be Kenyans because they are more equal. such that once this money goes to the reserving areas, we would want to see this money having the impact which it is intended for. Let us, we readers, MPs, the senators, the governors, and even the MCAs, once this money comes to your area, ensure that the projects which are done to those areas, they are going to improve the quality of the lives of those areas, so that Kenyans can be able to be as equal as possible, because that's the whole intention, and that's why the framers of the Constitution came up with a maximum number of years when this fund can be able to be in place, which is 20 years. And actually, there has been a loss of about almost 9 years. 9 years remaining. But we hope when the time comes, because also the framers of the Constitution gave a leeway, that Parliament may extend the period with a further 6 years. I believe because of the impediment we have been having in the implementation of these regulations, when the time expires, the members who've been in Parliament then, they raise the occasion and at least add those 6 years so that we can be able to achieve what the initial framers of the Constitution had in mind, that we want an equal Kenya where everybody is proud to be a Kenyan. With those few remarks, Madam Speaker, I beg to support.
No. What is out of order? There's no way that they can be out of order when the members finish contributing. Let me hear what is out of order. Honorable Kolosh, anything out of order? And the
Thank
members,
you, Madam
yes.
Speaker. Nothing out of order, really.
And you're on a
Madam
point of
Speaker,
order.
I rise on standing order number 95, taking into account the mood of the House, that with the mover be called to reply. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Before, of course, it's procedural. The honourable member's reason on a point of order. That is standing order number 5 is a different member. I don't know who did it. Is he the one who did a point of order? Before, then it's a different one. So he has his rights to do it. However, order, members, order. You know, as Speaker, when I'm here, I am non-partisan. And I must follow the procedures of the House and very well informed by own standing orders. The honourable member stood on a point of order, standing order number 95, to call upon the mover to reply. And from where I am, I cannot make a decision. It is you members. And therefore, members, I put the question that the Speaker be, the mover be called upon to order. Leader. Whip, the Speaker must give a direction. Honourable members stood on the point of order number 95 that the mover be called upon to reply. The Speaker will put the question. Will as many as are of this opinion say aye? Aye. And as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? Nay. Remember, the nays have it. Let's carry on. Let me have, of course, it's a big list. I have 22 requests for members who are wishing to speak to this. The Honorable David Sankok nominated. You're the next on my request list.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Kolosh could have just cut me out in such a very important report that I need to inject my voice. And Honorable Speaker, I will support, not because I support in principle, but because this fund have delayed in implementation, we want to kick it up so that it can start. But Honorable Speaker, in this report, we have increased from 14 counties to 34 counties that benefit from equalization fund, and this beats all human understanding. Honorable Speaker, because I don't now see the difference between the equalization fund and the devolution fund, because it is benefiting 47 counties, and this one is benefiting 34, I think we will have as well have given it to all the counties in this particular country, Honorable Speaker. I don't see the difference between this equalization fund and CDF, Honorable Speaker, and National Government Affirmative Action Fund, Honorable Speaker, because it is still benefiting all the areas. Honorable Speaker, it is because we have increased 20 more counties, because those who thought of increasing thought that there is...
Order. The members who are consulting on it, the member for Fafi. Member for Fafi.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for protecting me.
Please protect the Honorable Sankok. Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, marginalization is totally different from poverty level. We have used issue of poverty level to increase the number of counties that are benefiting from this equalization fund. But marginalization does not mean poverty. Marginalization means that because of continuous deprivation of infrastructure, to an extent that a school is 40 kilometers away, Honorable Speaker, that is when we really needed equalization fund to bring these counties up to speed with other part of the region, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, in 1965, there was session paper number 10 that is the cause of all this marginalization, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Sangok, we have points of order. I want to give it to the Honorable Member for Nganze, Mwambire Ngombao. What is out of order, Honorable Member?
Honorable Speaker, I think it is correct. Is it in order, Honorable Speaker, is it in order for a dignified member of the House to sit on the carpet of the House? Because, Honorable Speaker, I think as honorable members, we need to be in order. There's a member who is seated on the carpet of the House, the member for Chepalungu.
Is sat on the carpet of the House?
Yes, is that a dignified way for members of Parliament to behave that way in this House, Honorable Speaker?
That's a good concern. Let me get the Sergeant at Arms to... Where is he? Sergeant at Arms? Is the member well? Is he unwell?
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Order. What is happening? Let me find out. Is he squatting, consulting, or is sat? He could be unwell. I can see he's respecting the House that, yes. He's taking his seat. And I can see, now I can see where he's consulting. He's consulting the member for, Mandela.
Thank you.
Then I have the leader, Majority Whip, who has a point of order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this is a House of Record and a House of Rules. I would want maybe, through you, Madam Speaker, the Honorable Sankok was contributing to this bill, to this report, and he mentioned that there is a devolution fund. He compared devolution fund, Madam Speaker, to equalization fund. From where he sits, I don't know which is this fund called devolution fund, because for the purpose of records, he may maybe educate us on which is this that he calls devolution fund. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Very well. You may also wish to consult that the member would advise you accordingly. You may be aware of the equalization fund. I don't know how devolution fund, if it says married to equalization fund. So, Honorable Sankok.
Honorable Speaker.
And order members. And I want to direct members that let us not make it a debate or want to be heard. Let us be serious on the debate we have. It's not a fun day. The public is seen and they know that at this hour of the day, that the serious members of Parliament are in the House. So please, even as you contribute, let us, because other members want to make very serious contributions, let us avoid these side shows. But of course, I'll be able to handle you and make a ruling on you. So, Honorable Sankok, the member would have informed you about the equalization fund, if it's not devolution, but you can just clarify yourself as you move on. Contribute.
Yes, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, I was just comparing the money that we send to the counties to the money that we have in National Government Affirmative Action Fund, to the money that we have in CDF. It covers the 47 counties. Now, this equalization fund was supposed to cover only 14 counties. Now it is covering 34, and we don't know to where will they increase to. It is almost now covering the whole country. And Honorable Speaker, before I was rudely interrupted by my leader, Honorable Wangwe, I was saying that there is a difference between poverty and equalization. We are now using pockets of poverty in our different constituencies and counties to equate with marginalization. And marginalization, Honorable Speaker, of these counties, 14 of them that the drafters of our constitution thought that they have lagged behind came as a result of session paper number 10 of 1965. Honorable Speaker, where all our resources were invested in high potential area. Honorable Speaker, and those who were in the government that time were those who thought that agriculture is high potential. They never thought that livestock is high potential, wind power is high potential, our tourism is high potential, Honorable Speaker. That's why we have been marginalized for a long time. In our regions, Honorable Speaker, a school is 40 kilometers away. A hospital is 100 kilometers away. Honorable Speaker, and you know, Honorable Speaker, that because you are a very learned speaker, Honorable Speaker, I heard that you have done your PhD, Honorable Speaker, and you have done finance, Honorable Speaker. You know, I perused to you a CV, Honorable Speaker, and it is very difficult, Honorable Speaker, to get beauty and knowledge in the same person, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, what I was saying, Honorable Speaker, is that in these counties, Honorable Speaker, it is session paper number 10 of 1965, who are supposed to be brought on board with other counties, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, with your knowledge, you know that it is population that follows development. It is not development following population. We are here in Nairobi, not because of underground resources, but because of infrastructure, because of good roads, because of good schools, because even parliament is here, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, if we have equalization fund and build and develop any part of this country, Honorable Speaker, the population will be offloaded from our central Kenya and pockets of western Kenya, which is almost becoming world's largest slums, Honorable Speaker, because of the constraint of infrastructure, Honorable Speaker, to these other areas. That's why I'm supporting, Honorable Speaker, so that we can start implementing this equalization fund, not because I agree with the increase, Honorable Speaker, not because I agree in the principle on what they thought in bringing out other 20 counties, Honorable Speaker, but because we are 11 years late, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, again, I want also to support that the administrative costs be reduced from having so many committees in counties and so on. We can simply say, because there is constituencies, and now that involving the elected members of parliament, Honorable Speaker, that let our constituency be the lowest administrative unit, Honorable Speaker, because the infrastructure, the personnel are already in place, Honorable Speaker, so that we can manage it the way we have managed CDF, because we have seen CDF being managed very well, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, we have heard that 500 million have already been spent without any project, Honorable Speaker, because administrative costs in Kenya is what take the chunk of money, because those who are sitting on that money want to use that money to benefit themselves and to enrich themselves, Honorable Speaker, and there is where corruption comes in. So, Honorable Speaker, I plead with this House that we support, we pass this equalization fund, we start implementing it, but as we go along, we understand and we start reviewing why there was the need for equalization fund. Because most of these counties, the 14 of them, that the drafters of our constitution thought that they are marginalized, were actually marginalized because of the consecutive governments, the white government and the African government, that did not thought that our underground resources and our resources are potential, Honorable Speaker. I do support, Honorable Speaker.
Let me have the member for Samburu North, Honorable Ntoimanga Musa.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for giving this opportunity. Madam Speaker, I want to say that for Equalization Fund, I support the regulation, and I think it should have happened maybe yesterday or even 2 years ago. Madam Speaker, this fund is like an affirmative action. Actually, it's an affirmative action. Because just as my colleagues have said, it is because of the marginalization. This country was divided into two, the high potential and low potential. And it is, just like my colleague has said, it is a result of session of paper number 10 of 1965. And it really marginalized further, so much that even our Kenyans in that part of the country had to accept that they are not part of Kenya. If you ask somebody from Baragoi, if he's going to Nairobi, he says he's going to Kenya A, and he's coming from Kenya D. Everything that is happening there is so low in terms of development. And in fact, the tarmac roads, they don't reach that place. The electricity is not there. Healthcare is not there. Education is not there. So this Equalization Fund, I think the framers of the Constitution had deliberately introduced this fund so that it can bring at least some level of development closer to these other brothers of ours in other parts of the country. So these regulations, I urge members to pass it. Why? Because we have stayed almost 13 years without the release of this fund. Even the little that was released was not utilized fully. From where we sit, from Samburu North, I have eight projects that I've stalled out of the 352. 8 are from Samburu North because of the non-utilization of the fund. So these regulations, for us, it unlocks those the unutilized funds. These regulations are also put a new working framework, a new implementation framework for the funds to be utilized. Initially, Madam Speaker, the previous policy had put utilization into top-down disbursement, discussion of projects. It was top-down, not bottom-up. Because why did they do that? It was the PSS who were in charge of the board, and they're the ones who were selecting the projects. I remember the money that we received last time. The PSS were coming to our constituencies, or rather to the county headquarters, and they sit with us for us to select the project. It's in only one day, and the result of that coming there, flying shoppers, they used over 600 million for that particular, not just 2 days. So this regulation, even though we are not very happy about the bureaucracy that is involved in the selection of the committees, but at least it's something better than what we had before, and that's why I think the governors went to court. Now that it is this regulation brings all the stakeholders on board. So because of the timelines, because of that there are only 9 years remaining, I think we better accept this and wait until we get another new, maybe chairman's bill in the Senate, which was really very effective and very efficient. But because it has also reached a snag because of the senators, we better use this one in the interim, so that we can be able, because it will unlock 1.2 billion shillings for the stall projects and 6.8 billion for the other projects. We are not complaining about our other friends who have other counties, the 20 counties. We are not complaining, but we are just saying this money was meant for a purpose. It was not meant for people who are, because they are poor. No. If people are lacking services in Nairobi, it's not just because they are marginalized. It's just because maybe leadership within that county was not magnanimous enough to ensure that everybody gets projects or rather gets development in that particular county. With those remarks, Madam Speaker, I support.
Very well. So let me have the member now for the members of the member for Laikipia. Is it CWR?
Madam Speaker, thank you. I'll be brief because a number of us were interested to contribute on this regulation. Allow me to thank the Honorable Kamkit and his committee, the Committee on Delegated Legislation, for a job well done, and also for being on record to fast-track the process of releasing Equalization Fund. And Speaker, I know I do not need to repeat what other members have said, but it's good I mentioned because I've had a number of members say they want to use the CDF model in the implementation of these funds. And I just noticed something which is in the report, the committee report. They are talking of the Cabinet Secretary commitment saying CDF Act in itself has had its own share of issues at our courts, and therefore it would bring us another handle of problems. And it would delay the implementation or the disbursement, the process of disbursement of the resources. So I would only urge our members, for purposes of those of us who come from marginalized communities. I stand here candidly to speak for the people of Laikipia North and also parts of Laikipia West, which are experiencing problems and has been neglected by governments, in the previous regimes. And some of them actually do not even have road networks, do not have clean water, are still struggling even to the present regime with issues of security. And Madam Speaker, other than the fact that we have the county governments, that is what we call the revenue share, which, Madam Speaker, has been delayed because Equalization Fund has had the hitch because of the technical strongly to support us and to second this regulation and allow us to start experiencing and enjoying the fruits of the 2010 Constitution. Madam Speaker, it is unfair that we as a government, we have parts of this country which solely depend with CDF and what we call now resources which are going to our governors. And in instances whereby our members are not able to lobby for development projects from various ministries, Madam Speaker, they will always end up looking as if nothing is really going on in their regions. And I know those members who are receiving CDF, you'll agree with me, CDF is not enough to construct roads, especially of bitumen standards. It's not enough even to build universities or even colleges. Other than the basics of those constituencies have been lucky to get the TVET institutions. And therefore, Madam Speaker, allow me to thank the Commission for adding an extra constituencies. From the 34 counties, from the 14 counties which initially used to receive these funds to the 34 counties, which allows the people of Laikipia West and the people of Laikipia North to benefit in the second policy of the Equalization Fund. I'm very grateful, and I look forward to seeing more regions which are perceived to be rich, which are perceived to be developed, but they are lagging behind. And our girls continue lacking basic and essential things like sanitary towels. They continue lacking even shelter. For those of us who come from regions that would require boarding facilities, and Madam Speaker, I know you bear me witness, if I would put to task the Ministry of Education what monkey business has been going on as far as distribution of resources in the Ministry of Education as far as marginalized areas are concerned, you'll always realize the majority of our areas are left behind. Madam Speaker, for the first time, we've had a woman in Laikipia North as a member of parliament. Before the Honorable Sarah Rekorere came on board, we only had one single boarding secondary school. And now, Madam Speaker, with the little that you're able to get and the priorities that are to be put for measures of checks and balances, we're going to be in a position to see that we do extra beyond what CDF can be able to do. I support and I congratulate the committee. Thank you.
Can hear the Honorable Nikal, but you'll have your time to contribute. The member for Central Imenti, let me hear a member different from the marginalized. I don't know whether it's also marginalized. Member for Central Imenti.
Honorable Speaker, I stand here in by to support this report. Only safe to say that this report as it is, as it has been done, it looks good because it considers areas which have been sent to be marginalized. But when it comes to the circumstances and the way it was established, if you look at the new additions, as per Article 204, it talks of 14 counties. But as it is today, it talks of 34 counties. And when it talks of 14 counties, Madam Speaker, you look at it and you see that Meru is included and the Rakanidi is included. But when it comes to Meru, the regions which are mentioned, Madam Speaker, you'll be surprised that are the most remote areas with marginalized people. Tharaka is one of them, which is mentioned there. And now my constituency is in Trementi, which borders Tharaka. There are places which are inaccessible completely and people have been marginalized completely. Even myself, I'm unable to access the place because the place has no roads. The place has been marginalized. It has no water. There are 15 schools which are not accessible by motor vehicles. In despite of all other things which one can try to do, there is a place called Tonya. Another one is called Kidioroka. Another one is called Tulima. Many Betty and many places. And you can't access it. So those people who went to assess, the committee of Chairman Kamuketi, who went to assess these places which are defined as marginalized places, I believe when they went to Meru, they just sat in an hotel and they got somebody just to inform them that a place like this and a place like this is supposed to be included. They did not do their work properly. I support what my friend Muriongi, the member from Kitui, said. There is some biasness about this report. How do you come and include the most rich constituency in Meru, the most developed, and you forget the most poor one, Central Menti, and then you forget about Itigania West? What's wrong? What happened to this committee? So what I'm saying is that the report as it is, I support it, but it is biased.
Point of orders and you don't know how to do it, I think you're all out of order. You know how to do when you want to get into intervention.
Anyway, I support the report as it is. I support the report with those sentiments because I'm saying that we have been ignored. The most marginalized places have been ignored. We don't know the criteria which was used. With that one, I support it, Madam.
Let me get from the... Some of the members are shouting points of orders and your cards are not on. Point of information, who are you involving now? He's already completed his contribution. Yes. Let me get the member for Katanga.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for giving me a chance to also make my contribution. And I want to say from the onset, I support the implementation of these regulations. And I'm very happy, Madam Speaker, with the inclusion of Gatanga, which is only about 80 kilometers from Nairobi. And from Central Province, Madam Speaker, I can say we are the only constituency which has been included. And Madam Speaker, I wanted to say, it's not only pastoralists who are marginalized. It's not only pastoralists, as Honorable Dwale was saying. Even some of us who come from nearby constituencies, if you visit them, Madam Speaker, you'll be surprised. Gatanga, despite supplying Nairobians with water, despite the government building a new dam to bring water to Nairobi, Madam Speaker, I want to say we don't have water. Even at Ndakaine, where water comes from, our people next to Ndakaine don't have water, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, if you go to Lower Gatanga, which is Idhanga and Kakuzi, the services are very poor. Madam Speaker, those people don't have water, roads are impassable, power connectivity is very poor, the lack of hospitals, Madam Speaker, food is a problem, no job opportunities. Madam Speaker, that is why I'm saying it is important when we talk about this fund not to think about Northeastern alone. And I'm very happy, Madam Speaker, that even my neighbors, Masinga, who are also marginalized, have also been included. Madam Speaker, I also want to say that the inclusion of the additional counties is important. And Madam Speaker, when it comes to selection of projects, I would like the Commission to be very thorough. Because, Madam Speaker, looking at the original 14 counties, you can see the number of projects we stalled, 352 projects. And Madam Speaker, if you divide, you'll see there are approximately 25 projects per constituency, with a pending bill of 1.2 billion. Madam Speaker, this is unfair to Kenyans. And I want to say that when we start selecting new projects, we should be careful. We don't need to do very many projects. There's no need of initiating projects which will have pending bills which will not benefit constituencies. Madam Speaker, I also want to ask the commission which will come into place, they need to manage the resources properly like we do with CDF. I've seen here the report saying that we should not adapt the CDF model. Madam Speaker, the CDF model is the best. And I've even talked about it here previously, saying that even the central government, if they were to adopt this model, will not be having problems. Because the CDF model gives confidence to the contractor, it gives confidence to the community that the project will be implemented, Madam Speaker. Because currently, Madam Speaker, most of us are suffering. Government has allocated funds to do roads. 90% of the roads in Kenya have stalled, which is unfair. Why start projects which are not completed? With those few remarks, Madam Speaker, I want to say that I support 100%.
The member for Wajir South, Mohammed Sheikh, is it Sheikh?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I stand to support this report. I promise that I will be swift enough because many of my colleagues want to speak and we've got only a few minutes. Madam Speaker, the Equalization Fund was a fund that we've been waiting for quite a long, lengthy time. It is very unfortunate that this has taken this considerable amount of time during our tenure of the 12th Parliament. And it has taken so long unnecessarily, let me say that, because the resources that were kept away for over 3 to 4 years would have been used by the communities long enough. And therefore, it is an opportunity at this particular time that this report has been brought now, and we want to, and congratulate the committee that they have found that this is an important report to be able to bring forward and ensure that these funds are expended accordingly within the period of time. It is also important that we must acknowledge what the Equalization Fund has done in the past, in the sense that it has put more resources to constituencies. And at constituency levels, we were able to see that the funds have reached the village, the far-flung village. It is also important to note that it is working as good as the CDF. And it is important to note also that the members of parliament will be able to, be having, a consideration in the management and identification of projects in those rural areas in the constituencies. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I do support this report.
And now the member for Samburu East, Honorable Lekumontare Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to say I support this report. As my colleagues said, Madam Speaker, equalization funds are provided by the Constitution. And these are the funds, Madam Speaker, which has never served the purpose it was intended for. And I think the time has come for this regulation to be implemented so that, Madam Speaker, the areas in this country which are marginalized will start using the money. Madam Speaker, they are part of this country whereby tarmac road is just history. There are no electricity, no water, no dispensaries. And Madam Speaker, I think poverty is not the same as marginalization. And this equalization fund, Madam Speaker, will bring up the marginalized areas, which they lack so many services that can be provided by these funds. And Madam Speaker, although some members have cited so many committees, maybe in later stages will be looked at because there are so many committees, but I think it is the right time, Madam Speaker, that these funds will start helping our people. Because, Madam Speaker, really, some people are really not in this country. And if you look at what is happening in Kenya, some areas, there are massive road construction, while other areas are not passable. Roads cannot be passed. And I think, Madam Speaker, if this one will be implemented, it will help us. Because, Madam Speaker, it is really unfair to some part of this country, because the government serving the whole population in Kenya is one. And all places in this country need to be served. And this money will come and help us, although the 11 years we have wasted. And I think the committee will even bring an extension so that we can recover the time which has been lost, because there are so many funds which have not been used. And even the one that we are given, projects are not complete. And I think when this regulation comes in place, we will complete those projects. And with that, Madam Speaker, I do support. Thank you.
Very well, honorable members. By 9:20, I'll be calling upon the mover to reply. So members, as much as you have your rights, I think it's also good to be considerate of your members. I don't want to use my discretion to say use 2 minutes, 2 minutes. So Member Chepakulungu, I didn't want to tell you to use 2 minutes, but
thank you, Speaker. I will be able to use only 2 minutes because of the time and the demand from my colleagues. Honorable Speaker, I want to thank the team that came up with this regulation, my good friend, Honorable Kamket. This is a good regulation that will bring balance to the national cake to many of the constituencies who have been left out for many years from benefiting from this kitty. From the onset, Madam Speaker, when we look at the equalization fund, this was fund meant for balancing the key sectors of human life, that is roads, water, health facilities, and electricity. Madam Speaker, I come from one of the hard areas to live in, Chebalungu constituency. We are falling into this category of constituencies that should be benefiting from this kitty. Looking at last financial year, we had allocation of 26 billion, and out of it, we get nothing. I hope this time round, from raising the number of beneficiaries from 14 counties to 34 counties, I really expect that Chebalungu will be among the beneficiaries. From the parameters which are being considered from selecting the benefiting areas, I fully fall under this equalization fund kit. Madam Speaker, I lost the hardship allowance for teachers,
and all the surrounding constituencies, like Emurua Dikir and Narok West, both of them are getting hardship allowance for teachers. And that has been a big problem because the challenges that we are facing in Chepalungu constituency are also the same challenges that are being shared by my good neighbors like Emurua Dikir and Narok West. So, Madam Speaker, on this one, you look at the poverty index, you look at the development record, you look at the government institutions, that is the primary schools, secondary schools, and tertiary schools. All of those ones in my constituency, we are leading with the number of institutions, and CDF alone can do minimal as expected because the number of schools that we have are so many as per compared with what we received from the CDF kitty. Honorable Speaker, when it comes to like the term pastoralist, it needs a better definition because if we use the pastoralist to mean northern Kenya, I find it not the right term to consider because even as we do pastoralists, even as we do the dairy farming, and we get minimal returns from it. So we expect this kitty to come and balance the health center, the health sector in my constituency, the electrical power connectivity, and water and road network. Thank you, Speaker. I support this regulation.
Honorable Naisula.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And from the onset, I want to congratulate the able chair of delegated committee, Honorable Kamket, and his committee for expediting and bringing these regulations to this House, Madam Speaker, that will now put in force the Equalization Fund, Madam Speaker. And it is important to note that one of the key reasons that the pastoralist communities and the areas that have been marginalized for a long time in this country, the reason why we supported the 2010 Constitution, one of the key issues was the Equalization Fund, Madam Speaker. And it is interesting to see and watch many of our colleagues talk and think we just trivialize the matter of marginalization, Madam Speaker, in the areas that we come from. And that is, it is something that we should all take seriously and think why it was, it was seen even important to put it in our constitution, Madam Speaker. And it is unfortunate that the years that have passed cannot, for now, the time has lapsed and the funds have not been put into use as they were to be used, Madam Speaker. And it is important to note that in this budget, there is money meant for Equalization Fund, Madam Speaker. And once we have passed these regulations, I hope that the Minister of Treasury, Madam Speaker, will see it fit and deem it right that the priority, once they start dispersing the allocations of this financial year, Madam Speaker, that Equalization Fund be given a priority. Most of the projects that were put under the first policy, Madam Speaker, were the big projects that were going to stir economic growth in these areas, that were going to open up the areas, Madam Speaker, that were going to give services to these areas, Madam Speaker. For example, we have huge dams, we have huge roads also in these areas, we have issues of electricity connectivity, Madam Speaker. And for the time that has been lost, we pray that the Minister of Treasury will give equalization as a priority, Madam Speaker. I had some reservations on the matter of the committees. There is a lot of bureaucracy, and with the time that has lapsed, Madam Speaker, it might even impede this process further. But I think looking at it, we will let it go for now, and we hope that it will also help us to identify the projects that will really have a big impact in these particular areas, Madam Speaker. And for those very many remarks, Madam Speaker, I support.
Very well. You support. At the time, it's the time now to call upon the mover to reply, as I indicated. So the Honorable Kamket.
Madam Speaker, before I reply, I want to be magnanimous with two of my colleagues who have requested to say one word. So I'll donate 2 minutes to Honorable Nyikal and 2 minutes to the member for Kacheliba. Then I finish.
Very well, thank you. It's officially that the time that had been allocated.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Honorable Kamket.
Honorable Nyikal, when the Speaker is speaking, you wait, I'm giving some directives and clarifications. Yes, it is true that officially that the time that has been allocated or had been allocated for the committee reports is over officially, and now he has right to dedicate some of his minutes. And now the beneficiary are only two. Honorable, you can't use your 2 minutes, and the other one is a member for Kacheliba.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and Honorable Kamket. Madam Speaker, as I rise to support this, I want only say two things. We have many provisions even now in our constitutions that we have not put structures for. It has taken us 10 years to put a structure for a stand that came with the new constitution, and actually where we have put a lot of money, up to 15 billion. That is not acceptable. And I think the next thing is for the committee, and as we pass the regulations, to actually look at more the structures and clearly define what are the structures, too many committees, what are the criteria for defining these marginalized areas and the areas that need support. If those policies, guidelines, structures, and procedures are put in this place, we could even extend this to bring other pockets all over the country that are marginalized to the same levels as others. With that, I thank you, Madam Speaker, and Honorable Kamket.
And now the member for Kacheliba, the Honorable Lomunoko. Yes, ma'am.
Honorable Speaker, as I rise to support this motion, the regulations, I'd like to thank my colleague, Honorable Kamket, for donating part of his time to me. Honorable Speaker, these regulations have come at a time when the country is facing a lot of challenges, starting with the COVID-19 that has really molested us, together with the bad economic times and the looming food insecurity occasioned by below average rains. Honorable Speaker, these regulations will really help to enhance the completion of so many stalled projects in the entire country. For example, in my constituency, Kacheliba, we have 11 stalled boreholes that have been drilled and not fitted with the right equipment to serve the people. Honorable Speaker, together with the stalled boreholes, we also have stalled roads and dispensaries. Honorable Speaker, I want to say that the utilization of this fund has really lagged behind. 11 years since the Constitution mandated that such marginalized areas be equalized through such a fund. Honorable Speaker, much as I declared my interest to support this regulation, I also question the expansion of the beneficiaries list from 14 counties to 34. This will dilute the impact of these funds. Hence taking a slow pace for equalization. With that kind of slow pace, we may not realize to equalize the areas as intended. And lastly, I want to also say that to support also the sentiments by my colleagues who raised concerns about the bureaucratic orders created by the proposal committees in various government levels. This will cause unnecessary delays. The best model we would borrow is maybe borrow the CDF model. Thank you for that opportunity.
Very well. And now that we have the Honorable Kamket William, member for TRT.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to reply. Madam Speaker, I just want to, from the outset, say that I appreciate the immense support that this report has received from my colleagues. And I want to appreciate each and every one of them without having to mention them by name. Madam Speaker, there are fears that our members have raised, fears that because of the change of policy, the increase from the original counties that were 14 to 34 counties, and there is also misinformation and mixing up of issues that have been raised by some my colleagues. But I want to allay their fears, Honorable Speaker, that, like I said at the beginning, Madam Speaker, what is important is the implementation of these regulations. What is significant is that our people, the people that we represent, that are lacking in these services, get this money and that these services are provided. What is the problem, for instance, member for Kacheliba? If, for instance, one sub-location in Muranga that is considered marginalized by the Commission on Revenue Allocation, getting 10 million for a project, and you, member for Kacheliba, getting almost 5 billion or 6 billion for projects in your constituency. You cannot be mean to your neighbor or to your brother. What we need to do, you know, Madam Speaker, there's an African proverb that if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, you must run with others. This is what these regulations have tried to do. We have tried to herd everybody that is in the category of the marginalized. And, Madam Speaker, even in the counties, what the Commission on Revenue Allocation has, by going around in formulating the second policy, they realize that if there is intra-county marginalization, for instance, Madam Speaker, I come from Baringo, and in the first policy, Baringo was not identified as marginalized. Can you imagine that Tiati constituency, which is half of Baringo County, and which is one of the most arid constituencies in the Republic, was left out? What would the people of Tiati be doing if it were not for the second marginalization policy that was at the CKRC, Commission on Revenue Allocation, came up with? Madam Speaker, the major source of conflicts in the regions we come from, especially the pastoralist communities, the major sources of conflicts are water. They are caused by scarcity of water. That our people go and converge in one watering hole, for instance, in Kapedo. One of the major problems of the conflicts in Seguta Valley is the convergence of our pastoralists in very few watering holes, like the Seguta River in Kapedo. But if we have enough resources, Madam Speaker, from this fund, we shall be able to do pandams across the entire Seguta Valley region, and the conflicts that always happen because of the scarcity of water will be a thing of the past. These are some of the things that we think and we believe that this fund will unlock, and we shall have peace moving forward. This is the happiest day of my life as a first-time member of parliament for Tiati constituency, and I am happy, Madam Speaker, that history has placed me at this position in time as the chairman of Committee on Delegated Legislation, and I have come to this parliament, and I have moved these regulations, and they have been supported by this House unanimously. I pray to God that the implementers move with speed so that we have these monies and these projects done to save our people and bring our people up to speed with the rest of the Republic of Kenya as contemplated by the framers of our Constitution. I beg to move. I beg to reply.
Very well. Honourable members, with that, and from where I sit, I'm not in a position to put the question to the approval of the Public Finance Management, Equalization Fund Administration Regulations 2021. And so I do order that the question of the same, or to the same, will be put in the next sitting as to be located in the order paper by the House Business Committee. Order members. Members, the time being 9:30 p.m., this House stands adjourned until the Wednesday, 7th July 2021 at 2:30 p.m. I thank you all.